Yes. All right, cool. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here. We're going to talk about impact that lasts. But actually, we're going to talk about something that I think many of you are, distributed. But first I'm going to ask you, how many of you work for like Spotify, Uber, Amazon? I didn't think so, actually. Because I think most of you work for like distributed organizations, like Scania, banks, retail, logistics, distributed huge organizations where your data is, of course, distributed. So today we're going to talk about that subject, and we're going to talk about where we are now, where you are probably now trying to be service-driven, software-driven, data-driven, creating data-driven services and such. And probably someone is telling you to be fast. Like, we need to shorten time to value, time to market. We need to be able to scale. We need to get this service in place, and we need to scale. We need to like get data fast, use data fast, understand, make a service, bring it out to our customers, bring value out. And it has been hard. I think most of you can say that. It has been hard over the years to like collect data, put it in a place, harmonize it, and then make some value out of it. So what we're going to talk about today is like a method or an approach, actually, data mesh, where you can get your arms around it. So you can get data from distributed sources, use it, and combine something and bring value to your customers and your citizens in the country, for example. I'm Maria Hansson. I work as a business designer at Solita. So I combine data into services or into analytical value for customers. And fortunately for me, I have a superstar in data with me on the stage.
Hello.
Antti.
My name is Antti Loukela, and my title is a tech lead of data platforms, but what I do is usually data engineering, data platform architecture. I try to keep my hands on. That's more or less just the title, but yes.
And you're not Anticimex, because the guy after us is from Anticimex. And you asked, are you Anticimex? And he said, no, I'm not Anticimex, I'm Antti. So he's not Anticimex. Anyway, so we thought we would actually do this from a case perspective, from a real life, everyday perspective. So the case could be anything it could be a case within retail, could be from, energy consumption monitoring, for example. So the general case would be, we have loads of IoT data. We need to get it. We want to combine it with, for example, customer data, and we want to combine it with subscription contract data. Which kind of subscription does this customer have? Which kind of measurements are being done in the customer's house, in the customer's robot machine? How is the performance for the machine that they are renting from us? And what is the customer, which kind of subscription does this customer have? So that could be like a general case that is quite often the case in many organizations. So it's like a cross-domain case. We need to combine experts from different domains. We need to combine data from, different information domains, customer, product, parts, logistics. So one way to tackle this is to think, okay, we need to harmonize this data. And we need to be able to relate it to each other. So we need to harmonize all the data coming in. We need to relate it to customer information. We need to relate it to subscription contract information, for example. And then we need to share it. Otherwise, there's no point. Like the guy said, Schmarso yesterday morning or Jennifer this morning, it's like there's no value if we don't do something with it and if we don't share it. So we need to be able to share it, And as I said in the beginning, we need to do it soon. We need to do it very soon. We probably already had to do it. And then we need to be able to scale. We need to get, once we've done it once, we need to do it again and again and again and again. And need to like get more of the data load going and have like a machinery for this, getting data in, bringing it out, harmonizing, relating, bring it out. And that's not easy, but he knows. So we will listen to you now.
No pressure, huh?
Yeah, no pressure at the CMX.
Yes. I think there's a very good point that if we think about concepts like data mesh or domain-oriented distributed data platforms, that's a handful or a mouthful, but every time when you distribute, what you're actually looking for is scaling. That's what you're after. If you don't have to scale, don't look into these paradigms of data mesh and so on. But if you need to scale your data management, then look into it. There's fantastic stuff in there. So I'll touch upon 3 points, what we wanted to lift up for this. First one is start small. When I have been working with companies that are looking into data mesh or distributed approach of this, what I find is that many teams are actually struggling with the data that they are sitting next to. So if you imagine like a marketing team, they're dealing with Salesforce or Facebook or Instagram and all of this. But the data is stuck in those systems. Luckily, for those systems, it's fairly easy to get it out, but there's other systems that, the team that's sitting right next to the sources has a hard time getting access to the data that they're actually dealing with every day. So many of the teams, giving them freedom to access the data and also making them responsible for the data they're accessing allows them to do fantastic things with the data that they have. So all of a sudden, we talk about, like Maria said, about combining data. But in many cases, the teams can actually do a lot with the data that they're dealing with every day. And what's really cool is that of course, these people know what the data is about. They know if it's sensitive or not. They know how to use it, why it's in that way. And in legacy systems, you usually have these that if the field is 1 and the second field is A and the third one is double dash, then it means this. And the people who can tell you that are usually sitting very close to the application. So this allows these teams to actually start driving. And what I've seen is that it takes around a year and a half for these teams to actually start looking for data from other domains. Once you get access to the data, you start making sense of it. You can make analytics of it just within your domain, within your business team. And I think it's fantastic. So out of this, start small. What are the keys? Well, you should always aim to create value. Well, that's obvious. But when you start small, you can really focus on the business problem. We had a very good case where a single team had an extremely clear business goal. And what we did is we brought in the people we thought this team would need in order to do the analytics that they wanted to get out of it. Within 2 weeks, they had a proof of concept. Within 2 weeks from that, they were in production. The solution was awarded for multiple things. It was really lifted up. Extremely simple thing, done in a single domain and helping a lot. The thing was that it was creating value. It was aiming to create value. It wasn't a huge thing. It was exactly that. So how do you identify these? How do you identify what are the value-creating things? Well, it's finding the low-hanging fruit. And I think this is obvious to many, that usually you have on the x-axis, you have the technology, how hard is it from the technology perspective. On the other axis, you have the value it creates. By mapping your different initiatives, your different things that are happening within a company to this, you can actually start seeing which are the low-hanging fruits, which you should focus on. And there you need service design. And service design helps you to map these out, but also it helps you to define value. I know it's easy to talk about value, but what does a value mean? What does a value mean for you? What does it mean for customer? And in the field of service design, there's tons of tools to actually map this out. There's, of course, a huge risk of reinventing the wheel. But is that a bad thing? I don't think it is. So if you imagine that you start 3 cases, each one of them reinvents the wheel. They do exactly the same thing in exactly the same way. What that actually tells you is that the way, like this way of doing it makes sense. And you should actually find the common denominator out of these 3 cases and turn that into platform. So now if you build your platform out of these single cases, your platform will start to look like what creates value for you. So like Maria said, you're probably not from Spotify, and I would almost dare to say that you will not become one unless you're in the music business. You have to reinvent yourself. And the way you create a platform that creates value for you is through creating single business cases and driving and creating the platform from there. And I think one sort of really important thing is that if you start small, when you start, your hypothesis involves a huge risk because you don't know if it's going to succeed or if it's going to fail. If you start with a big bang, with a big risk, yes, there's a possibility for high reward, but there's also a possibility for huge failure. Start small, fail small, and learn from your failures. So now we have identified the problem. We know what a value means to us. We know it's not happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a business function. It's happening in a single team. But we have to take the expertise to that business problem. We don't take the business problem to the expertise. We need to take the expertise to the business problem. And I think this is kind of a bit flipping the idea, in a sense. We have to go to the problem because the problem defines the goal for the team. And now we have to design the team so that it's able to solve the problem. So, for example, the case that I was telling, did they need a developer? No. Did they need a cloud architect? Yes. They actually utilized logging capabilities in a different setting. So we actually found someone who had done a lot of logging kind of problems and was able to help them. So we found the people that was needed in order to solve the problem, not taking the problem to IT, but rather IT going to the problem. And I know a lot of companies are talking about becoming data-driven, to become a software-driven. Digitalization is still a big thing. But if you really imagine that a large company has multiple teams scattered all over the company, if you really will become a digitalization, the data-driven, the software-driven, you have to put the software people into all over the company. It can't be a central activity anymore. But now we're kind of, moving towards decentralized way of doing it. And I think it's natural because data is distributed by nature. Your company, like Maria said, it's distributed by nature. You have different business functions, you have some call them silos. Silos has a good side to it as well. You have expertise in a specific field, sitting next to each other, solving those business problems. They're using different kind of applications. The applications are built for the context that it's needed for. Data born out of those applications. So the data is distributed by nature as well. So in my opinion, the data management has to be distributed as well, following this logic of mine. But what do you then centralize? Well, you centralize the domain agnostic parts. So as I said that you You build 3 applications, you build 2 applications, whatever the amount it is that you start. You notice that this and this is the similar thing that's happening, all of them. They are therefore domain agnostic. You know, they're happening all of these domains. So you extract them out, you put them to be part of your platform, so now all of these that utilize that can actually leverage the platform in order to build it. Probably the next one will also utilize it, and so on. Of course, in real life, we can be smart. If we map out 20 cases, we realize that all of them need reporting, all of them need maybe master data, all of them need warehousing capabilities, whatever it is, you can be smart and do some predictions on it. But don't make too big predictions, because then, again, you might fail big. But one really central thing is when you have distributed systems, whether it's distributed APIs, distributed computing, distributed data, you need central discovery. And in the field of data, we of course have data catalogs. The data catalogs really help you to make sense of the distributed worlds, and they fit in really nicely. It's definitely something to look in. And if you're thinking about going distributed, it might actually make sense to put in data catalog before you have a single data source available, because the data catalog is a really good way of marketing this idea. So you have a single website or a single place where you go to discover the data assets. If you don't have anything there, you can still promote the idea. Once you get data in there, people know where to discover it. So the data catalog, it does play a central role here. So to summarize though, start small, aim for the value, help people to define the value. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your customers? Have cross-functional teams. Take the people to the problem so that they can help the team to solve it. And these problems don't live in a vacuum. They live in a business functions. And have centralized discovery. What data catalog also implies is that the data has to be interoperable, it has to be trustworthy, it has to be governed, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So central discovery also means that you can discover it and also use it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're wrapping it up. So using an approach like data mesh is not really something like invented now. It has been distributed before. We've had a distributed mindset before in organizations like many of you come from. But I would say this would be a structured approach that you can take decisions around, invest around, organize yourself and your team and your cross teams around in order to together accelerate the time to value, the way to get data, to use it, to servitize it and bring it out to customers, and people need to use it.